Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. My name is Kyle Smith, and joining me is my friend and colleague, Jeff Smith. Our mission is to share practical advice and explore topics that will help every band director, no matter your experience level, as well as music education students who are working to join us in the coming years. Together, we will discuss many aspects of a well-rounded band program, but most importantly, we will discuss concepts that help us all improve our own programs each and every day. Always remember the famous quote by Ray Kroc, "When you're green, you're growing, and when you're right, you rot." Let's get started. Okay, thank you everybody for joining the Growing Band Director podcast. We are very happy to do this a middle school hang today. First, before we start, I'd like to do a shout out to Mary, one of our listeners, who sent us a couple emails about her story and inspired us a lot and thanked us for what we do. So Mary, thank you for listening and telling your friends, and thanks for reaching out. So today, our middle school hang, I have two of my favorite people and two great middle school band directors with me. And I have to start with my wife, because happy wife, happy life, right?
Absolutely.
So I'd like to introduce my wife, Krystle Smith, fantastic teacher and the love of my life. Krystle, what's going on today?
Hi, glad to be here.
And the great Jean Quinn.
Not the great, I'm just Jean Quinn.
Well, Krystle, let's start with your story. Would you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. So I'm going to try to do the highlight reel here so that I don't take the entire podcast with telling you all the ups and downs of this story. But when I was 12 years old, I was part of my middle school band program at LaRanger Middle School in Old Orchard Beach. Did you just lose my sound for a second?
I did.
You got it back now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I went to middle school at LaRanger Middle School in Old Orchard Beach, and my band director was George Shabo. Everybody in Maine knows George Shabo, and I'm pretty sure everybody in New Hampshire and probably parts of Massachusetts know him as well, and maybe even Rhode Island, because he's from Rhode Island. So when I was 12, I was in my band class, and I looked up and I just said, I want that job someday. Not necessarily his job, but I wanted to teach middle school band so bad. And so a few years later, I started taking private lessons way late in the game. I felt like other college bound musicians were taking lessons earlier than me, but our family had some financial constraints. And so after a while, we were like, okay, I want to go to college for music. We'll do lessons. I auditioned to 4 colleges. I didn't get into my top 2. It was very, very disappointing. And I had somebody at one of those colleges tell me that I needed to come as an undeclared major and then audition again and hope to get in as a sophomore. So I was thinking about other opportunities. And then the last 2 colleges that did accept me were kind of contingent. So I kind of just took a risk and said, all right, well, I know this college and there's a few friends that I know at this college. I'll go and see how it works out. So long story short, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I went to Gordon College in Wenham, Massachusetts, and had an incredible experience there. Dr. David Rocks was my college band director, and I'm still connected with him today. He connected me with many amazing people, and I had a great student teaching experience and got my first job in August. Those of you who are looking for a job right now, if you're just coming out of college, like just keep applying for everything because my first job came a week before school started, and that was wild. Things were not easy for me. Nothing was really easy for me. I had a hard time with ear training. I had a hard time with playing my instrument. I had a hard time with a lot of things. And I felt like when I met students who were in that situation that I had a lot of sympathy and understanding for them and really dug deep when it came to learning how to teach any kind of learner because I wasn't naturally gifted myself. So I, of course, since then,
But I'm going to introduce her. I'm jump in real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
But that's sort of what makes you a great teacher, right? Because you've struggled with a lot of stuff. So
yeah, I mean, I guess they say like performers aren't always the best teachers because it comes so easy, and I was not one of those. It comes easy to me kind of performers, although it was required of us at Gordon to perform a lot. It was always really hard for me, and so digging deep as a teacher was what I always wanted to do, and Gordon College knew that about me which is why I think I was able to finish with the degree program and really push hard. So I have been at Westbrook Middle School for 15 years now, which is hard to imagine. And I've met amazing colleagues along the way. Of course, Kyle and I are married, so it's pretty awesome, having a walk or going to dinner, and we end up talking about our jobs a lot. But that's because we've loved it all these years. And we'll talk more about this, but being here with Jean is really special to me. So you guys will hear more about that story. And I got to know Jean a long time ago, and we've always wanted to have an experience that we did this past year together. So we'll tell you more about that later.
And for anybody who's listened to any of the grade 1 or grade 2 podcasts, most of those ideas were from Jean. So we're really excited to have her here. How we doing, Jean? Tell us her story.
Good. I grew up in Winslow, and I was in the marching band and jazz band and concert band, and Brian Hutchinson was kind of a mentor to me. My dad worked long hours and my mom didn't drive, so he used to take me to RB Hall Band because he was the director, and we'd talk, and you can't really do that anymore, but we had a great time, and he totally helped me through everything. I decided my senior year, after studying with Gene Jones my junior year, that hey, I might want to go into music. I might want to be a teacher. And like Krystle, nothing came easy to me. I had to relearn how to play my clarinet because I did it all wrong up until that point. And it was just I struggled with everything as far as school went, but worked through it all. I went to USM because I wanted a smaller school, and I knew some people that went there, and Peter Martin was the band director, and he's the one who saved me through college. When I was in college, both my parents died within a year and a half of each other, and if I hadn't had a small school and the faculty that was there at the time, I would never have made it, and he still reaches out to this day. I taught my first 5 years at Winslow Junior High. I went back to my hometown. That was weird, but it was also a gift. When you're first teaching, you don't know a lot of people. You're scared. You don't think you're that good. You're really nervous. And I had mentors that were already there. And in 1989, I decided to move down this way because I met my husband, Rusty, and we were going to be married. So we moved down to South Portland, and I interviewed at South Portland. And the first thing I had to do was take a 6-page written test. And it was things like, when did J.S. Bach die? Don't ask me those questions anymore. I don't think I'm going to remember. Write out the progression of a 12-bar blues. And while I'm taking this whole exam that seemed really difficult because I hadn't had any jazz experience, I was like, I don't want this job. I don't want this job. So I went into the interview, and lo and behold, I got the job. So I had been there for 31 years, and I just recently retired. Norm Richardson was my mentor there, and I learned more than I ever learned in college from Norm Richardson. And you know him, Kyle.
I do. He was one of my band directors.
Yes.
Yep.
And I recently retired, and I'm teaching pre-K to 8 general music, which I never thought I'd love, and surprise, here I am.
She couldn't get enough, so she had to come back.
Yes, absolutely. And I worked last year with Krystle, which was a gift.
That's awesome.
So tell us about that experience. So, Krystle, why was Jean working with you last year?
So the whole year started with, of course, we're coming back from COVID, and it was a hybrid year for us here in Westbrook last year. So or the year before. So we had this hybrid schedule, and with that, I ended up having to hold my program 100% remote again for an entire school year to hang on to my students. It was absolutely brutal. And oddly enough, Jean had to do the same thing. And so we would commiserate with each other all year long. I would have a horrible day, and I would call her up and be in tears and be like, I can't do this anymore. And she's like, me neither.
I think we talked every day.
Almost every day. And so, at the end of the year when she said, yep, I'm going to retire, I cheered for her so loud. I was just like, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm so happy for her. And then a month later, I found out that my co-teacher was leaving, and I was strapped and I was freaking out. And so we did the interviews, and I was so excited to hire a former student of mine for the position. But guess what? She was going on maternity leave at the beginning of the year. And so I was, again, freaking out again for like the third time that summer. And I called Jean, and I was like, Jean, I know you're going to say no. I know.
No, because I can't say no to Krystle. That's why I didn't say no.
I was was like, I know you're going to say no, but I really need somebody to come in for 6 weeks, please. And believe it or I can't even believe it, but she said yes. And I just, the first 6 weeks were like magical. It was just really fun because I wanted to teach with Jean for years. And of course we were in 2 different schools. So how could we do that? We would like hang out with each other occasionally on professional development days, or we'd see each other at honors festivals, but never in a classroom every day for that amount of time. So
and we had been saying that we'd always wanted to teach together.
Always wanted to teach together. And so it was just like, it was all worked out. It just worked out. And then when my co-teacher finally came back after her maternity leave, things were fine. They were great, but there were so many needs in my classroom to the point that I didn't know what to do anymore. And I'm sure a lot of you were in this situation. So I was calling for help a lot and ended up being in a meeting with the principal kind of at my wit's end, ready to feel like I couldn't do this anymore. And I just proposed, could I have Jean come in for a couple of days? We have like a ton of need here and we don't have enough people. There weren't people coming in as subs. Like there were just so many circumstances that we just didn't have what we needed. And my principal said yes. So then for the rest of the year.
And normally they would say no, right? But because of COVID, they said yes.
Like there was, I mean, like I said, there was like all this sub money that wasn't being used. And so she was able to come in 2 days a week just to give me support in my classroom. And it was like, it helped me survive the year. There's no way I would have made it through the year without Jean.
And it helped me because I left South Portland feeling really badly about myself because of COVID. And I'm sure there are teachers that felt that way, that they felt like, I'm not very good. What am I doing? I'm not, I can't hold the program like I always have. And I know it sounds like I'm being unrealistic, but I felt that way. And I didn't think I ever wanted to teach again. And then Krystle called, and I can't say no to Krystle. And then the sub thing ended up working out, and it really made me feel like, okay, I made the right choice to retire when I did, but I am leaving on a much better headspace by doing this. It was wonderful.
Well, you sort of touched on something that we all feel, I think, like no matter what happens in your program, you take it on your shoulders.
Yep.
And every kid can move out, every kid can move in, things can change, but if you do your job, you're still going to have what you consider a good band, right? So.
And after 36 years, when a kid drops, I could never get over that. I always take it personally. And you'd think after 36 years, I would have been like, oh, okay, it's fine. But I take it personally. I feel like I did something wrong.
Yep. Same.
Yeah.
So those people who are listening who feel that, you're not the only ones. Jean, also real quick, can you tell us what it's like to teach your own kids? So for those of you who don't know, Jean has 2 sons who came through the program that she was teaching at, and you moved because you wanted them to be in that school district, right?
Yes.
And they're both fantastic musicians. So how was that teaching your own kids?
Kyle and I are listening really carefully, by the way, because you all heard Addie last week, and I have to teach my kid. So thank you.
And I gave you some things
really,
about that. Yes.
Really good advice.
So I didn't teach Eric, and actually that's a good thing because he and I are a lot alike, and I think that would have been a hard thing. But we moved to South Portland because where we lived, the music program was not what I needed for my own child. And so Eric had done marching band because he was where he was before didn't have the program. So when he met the people in marching band, he loved it. So we're like, all right, we're putting our house on the market. We're moving to South Portland. Then I had Alex in 6th grade, and Alex is really an introvert and really shy when he was in 6th grade. And he loved it. He loved me working with him because he said he didn't have to work hard to get to know the teachers because I knew them. The reason why I could teach them so well was they took private lessons from someone else. I'm so glad that they took private lessons with Alan King. He was great for them. He was great for their head. And I struggled really hard with Alex being in the jazz band when he was in 7th and 8th grade band because he was such a good musician. And it's not a proud mom saying that. It's people realizing that he's such a good musician. And he deserved solos, but I didn't give him solos or
that's going to be really hard, right?
For the longest time because I thought people, and I didn't give him awards for the longest time because I thought people would think, you're favoring your child. And I had to speak to his classes, because they were like, well, of course he can play it. He's your child. And I said, absolutely not. He's working hard. I don't help him at home. And we had that conversation, Krystle. I don't help him. He needs to do it on his own.
Yep, I have definitely stiff-armed Addie and been like, go ask your father.
Yeah,
I just don't want to help her at home.
Yeah, it's a really hard thing, but yeah, it was. looking back now, I'm really glad that I got to teach Alex. I really, really am glad. It worked out great and it was wonderful, but it's a struggle as a parent teaching your own child.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's pivot to this topic around having a long career. I think that's very typical for our day, right? Because like, oh my gosh, you can do this forever.
Yeah.
So Krystle, you've been teaching
17 years.
I think it's 18 years.
Oh,
I think,
18.
I think
Okay.
18 years.
Okay.
Because you taught 2 years before.
Yep.
And I'm in year 20 or 21, something
So you
like
lose
that.
track, obviously.
Yeah, you
I
do.
You
didn't
just
know.
do.
I know.
I was 17 or 18.
But we bow to Jean.
You do.
But I didn't go to 40, which some people have, but it's okay.
And Phil Rich, who just retired, was at 42.
42.
I
He
know.
just
Yeah.
that's crazy. So
And when, I have to say something about that. When I was retiring, I said to Rusty, but I didn't make it all the way. And he's like, it's not a competition.
Yeah, right.
because he
Obviously,
wants
I'm
you to
a
retire. get home. Yeah. So let's talk about some secrets. What are some ways that we can, have a longer career? Like for me, I think about detaching, right? Like that's so hard to do, to like be detached from whatever you're hearing, and like it's only a job. And we're not built like that, right?
I
So-
couldn't do that.
Right.
So
It's
what
hard.
do we do?
That's part of the reason why I retired, because I couldn't do that. I needed to detach and I couldn't do it. The one big thing that made me last a long time in my career and not feel like I was, like burning out, because a lot of teachers suffer burnout, is at the end of every school year, I'd always write what went well and what didn't. And then I would, in August, I would read it and then go, okay, I need to do this year. I need to do this. I would constantly reflect on my teaching.
So no matter how long you've been teaching, every year you tried
Every
to
year I
tweak.
did it.
You didn't change everything. You just tried to tweak some things that you thought we could.
I tried to change it up, but yeah, tweak. Keep the things that worked well and tweak. I kept continuously learning, is I guess what I'm trying to say. I didn't get stale. I kept continuously learning. And
When you're green, you're growing.
Yes, when you're green, you're growing. Absolutely. Yeah. And reaching out with other people, working with other people, not working alone. Music is not a lone thing. It's collaborative.
We talked. You had mentioned burnout real quick. So we have this rule in July that I tend to break, but
He's really bad at it, you guys. You need to chime in and like give us some family advice or something.
so the rule my wife told me was there's no listening to band music in July.
Yeah.
And to tell you the truth, I haven't listened to band music in July in a long time around you.
Oh.
So
Around you.
Now he's a closet listener, everybody. Like, what on earth?
You didn't
But-
have to sign a contract?
but
That
I-
wasn't part
but
of
I
your
still-
wedding
I
vows?
still
I'm trying to help him out here.
I still don't listen very much, and all that. But whose phone is ringing? That's my
It's
phone.
yours.
Sorry. But I thought that was a good rule. So thank you for implementing that. For
I
me.
try. I don't want him to burn out. So I think sometimes we just need to like take a breather and then come back to it.
To be honest, this podcast has kind of helped, and people think it's more work, but it's actually less for me. Like it helps me think about things and deal with things. So
That's
Kyle's
cool.
one of those, I'm going to let you all into a secret here, that he's a little bit of a obsessive personality. So he's all in, and by I mean like all in, like there is not 1 second that he isn't thinking about how to improve himself as a teacher and as a band director. And he really, really works hard to make sure that he's doing everything he can to make it happen. And so that's like a constant cycle. It's from sun up to sundown. And so my point was like not to like get him away from band music, but it was really just to help him kind of process, because he's not quiet often in his mind. So if you're like that, I understand. Just have somebody tell you to not listen to band music for a little while.
I feel like, though, you're more of an auditory learner, aren't you? Are you, Kyle?
yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's the difference,
Yeah.
I feel like. Because Rusty's very auditory, too, and he's constantly listening. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I know.
I need quiet.
Sometimes I just want a quiet ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yep. Yes. The other thing I wanted to say was the thing that improved my teaching was when I started mentoring or having a mentor come in. Like, can I tell a story about the MBDA festival? When I used to take my bands, I thought I knew what I was doing until I had someone adjudicate what I was doing. And that's a lot of teachers are afraid of it because of that, but I think it's a great thing because of that. I had Andrew Boysen tell me that my claves were terrible, and that's all he kept saying through the whole thing. And I'm like, I didn't even listen to the claves. Like that was before I didn't really, that was years ago where I didn't even listen to the percussion section.
That's funny.
I'm like, we have a percussion instructor. I wouldn't even think to listen to the percussion section. Yeah, so that opened my eyes. That was an aha moment for me as far as teaching that, okay, I need to really pay attention to every detail.
It takes a while to get to that point, though, doesn't it? It's
Yes.
like, at first, I remember I was a flute player and I was learning how to read a score, and I was like terrified to get my eyeballs away from the flute part right at the top of the page, because I was like, if I look down, I swear I'm not going to be able to follow this thing. But it takes a while to like hear it and like read it and all the way through, and to actually, be able to listen to all the things.
Yes.
It's like it takes your ears so long to be able to get to that bottom level, or whatever the bottom level is for you. If you're a percussionist, you probably hear it all, but maybe just to hear like some inner part or whatever, it takes a while.
It does.
So back to the I need to listen to a lot of band music discussion, right? To me, if I know the piece well enough by ear, I mean, obviously I read the score, but to me, I'm just, and when I start conducting my band, I hear the piece going in my head,
Yeah.
and then I hear what's happening, and then whatever doesn't line up is to me what I work on.
Yeah.
So that, to me, having a mental model, and you mentioned, my mentor and good friend, Andy Boysen, he said when I was in graduate school, listen to the piece a couple times and then don't listen to it.
Yeah.
Do all your score study. I've broken that rule every day since I
Same.
left college, and Andy, I'm very sorry. But this tends to work for me. So,
Yep, I absolutely the same. Like I was taught to not listen to this, learn the score without the music, and
Yeah.
I haven't done very well.
well,
with that
because
either.
sometimes they do something in the music, in the recording, and you think you have to do that.
Yeah,
But like there might be a crescendo. But what if there's a really cool harmony somewhere and you want a crescendo and bring it out? And you don't know that because they don't do it on the recording. And if you don't
Right.
study that, there's like an extra color tone, so we need a crescendo to it.
absolutely.
That's why you're supposed to study the score. And I think as we go on more and more and more, sometimes we forget to study the score, especially because if you think you're a good teacher and you're like a high level, and this piece is like not that complicated, you think you can kind of fly by the seat of your pants and you do it.
Yeah,
And a lot
yeah.
of times we can.
Yeah. Don't you think that what makes a good teacher is they don't think they're that good a teacher?
That's why you bring your. That's
why
why
you
good
have to-
teachers bring their
keep
bands to
working.
band
Yes.
festivals, right? Because
Yes.
you're humble enough to accept whatever you are getting for advice and know how valuable it's going to be, and just let yourself be vulnerable. and
Absolutely. It's
get what you need.
terrifying.
It's horribly terrifying. It is. It's like I'm back in college and I'm playing for all my friends again, and it feels like that times 10 because you have all the performers that are on your shoulders.
Yes.
Everything has to go the way that you think it's supposed to go.
But the kids are so much more motivated when they have
They are.
they get
so
to
much
go
more.
places, they
They're
get
so
to do
motivated.
stuff.
And you can even
Absolutely.
show them the sheets. Like that was one thing I loved doing with my students when I was bringing them to band festivals. I didn't last year. COVID was a mess. But, I would pass out the sheets, and then we have an opportunity to tell them about each category and what these terms are going to mean that they're going to hear from the judges' tapes, because frankly, with middle school, it's pretty much the entire thing. They're going to hear all these things that they don't necessarily know of, or language you don't use with them every day, but we interpret that language for them in front of them. And so we would break down the sheets and we'd say, today we're going to work on this and this in this part of the piece. So you guys know what this means when they're talking about this. It kind of brought that experience of bringing them to a festival. It was more for them than for me, even though in my head I'm like, I need the advice too. So
The best thing is that it's a great learning tool. And when you're just teaching them in class and trying to teach them about balance, blend, ensemble stuff, they're listening to you, but they're not really listening to you.
yeah, right.
And when you hear someone else say the same thing that you've been trying to say to them in something, it's great.
Yeah, totally.
It's kind of like when your children won't listen to their parents, but they'll listen to your parents' friends. If you would.
That's brilliant. I love that. The more they can be parented by other people, the better.
And there's another way to go about that too. Sometimes you can, have other teachers come into your school,
Yes.
how to work that out, or you go to other schools, or,
Yes.
just ask for people to say stuff, because especially if you have other people who walk it with you, right?
Absolutely.
Like they know whatever your band sounds like. They know you've done everything you can do so far.
Yep. Our dotted quarter 8 thing. Our kids
Jean,
know
can
our
you come and
dotted quarter.
clinic my band this year, please? Okay, good. I have one person coming to my classroom this year. I have not given her the opportunity to say no yet, so she's coming. But Jean will tell you about our funny moment every year because it's hilarious.
We actually would FaceTime each other right during the day in the classes, and when Krystle students would be learning the dotted quarter eighth, she'd FaceTime and say, "Listen, they can do the dotted quarter eighth. Go ahead," and they'd go da da because that's how I teach it. And then I would FaceTime her and do the same with my kids. The kids loved it, and they don't forget a dotted quarter eighth.
They don't. And then they'd go to like honors festival or band camp or whatever and see one of us. They'd be like, "Oh my gosh, you're that lady that was on my phone, that was on the phone. And I can't, you're that person." Or like a kid would come up to me and whisper to me and be like, "Hey, is that the person who you called about
She's
the
famous.
quarter note? Is that her?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's her."
Well, and for people who are like, "That's so stupid. Like, why would you go da da?" Well,
They're subdividing.
well,
Subdividing.
well, no, but as high school teachers, we would also go 1 and 2.
Oh, we do.
And.
Yes.
Well,
But-
it's the same thing, but
Yeah.
that sort of leads me into the next sort of sense of topic is like, what makes you a good middle school director, right? What are some personal traits that really allow you to relate with kids and build a middle school program?
So I have always said, as a middle school band director, you don't need to know the music. You don't need to know, like, how to be a teacher as much as you need to know how to be a person, I think is what I mean. Like, it's not, if I just taught what I wanted the kids to know without connecting with the kids, they wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
You have to be trustful. You have to be kind.
Yep.
And you have to be able to read them,
You have to be able to read them.
right?
You have to have
be able to read.
compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you have to almost see it from their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
You almost have to get out of your own head and be like, "I've been in this for 18, 30, whatever, however many years, too." And just say, like, erase what you think is supposed to happen or how it's supposed to go or what it's supposed to sound like or whatever, and try to sit in their seat and hear from their ears what they need. Because then when you speak, it's going to be like, "Oh, I get that because I understand that." And look for confirmation, because middle school kids are terrible at giving you confirmation
Yes.
that they even understand. Like, you're going to get blank stares and you're going to get distracted kids and you're going to get all the things. And you just have to, like, even if it's a hand raise or if it's a thumbs up, if it's like whatever it is, like, just look for confirmation in what they are learning, because they're also insecure. Like, they're just, being a middle school kid is tough. And then we throw all this stuff at them. And it's, of course, music is super academic. So then they're like overwhelmed by the content that they're getting sometimes. And music is not, easy to get the first time around. So, often when I'm teaching, I think about myself and how I didn't get it the first 8 times that I learned it or whatever.
And you have to say it different
You
ways.
have to say it different ways. And you have to also acknowledge that, like, listen, this is not the last day I'm going to teach a dotted quarter note and eighth note. I will teach it every day. And you know what? My husband's going to teach it at high school too. So if you're really lost, like, don't stress about it, because you're going to get it more than once in many, many, many ways. So
Absolutely.
I had an analogy that I was thinking about in my head. I don't know if this makes sense to anybody else, but I was mowing the lawn last week.
Stop right
And-
there. It doesn't make sense.
no, I don't understand what you're talking about.
But for those of you who mow lawns, I was like, I've mowed this lawn every week for the last 4 years. And then 7 years, but in the last house. And they're like, you mow the lawn every week or whatever, right? It's the same stinking lawn. And you have to mow it I was like, mowing this lawn is almost like a school year. It's like every time it's different, but every time it's kind of the same. But you can't go, "Oh, I mowed it 4 times last month, so I'm not going to mow it this month," because, or else you turn around and your lawn's going to look terrible.
Right.
It's something you have to consistently do and think about. So
And you can't, right, exactly. And you're constantly teaching all the concepts every day. Like,
All
you
the
can't,
time.
yeah.
Well, and if you're, and I was thinking about this too, if you think on a macro level, how you're going to do it, that's fine. But if you don't think about the little things like going in a straight line or like not missing big strips of grass,
Yeah.
then your wife's going to look out and say, "Well, why didn't you mow the whole lawn? You miss them." Well, that could be the,
I never do that, everybody. I never do that.
that could be the, I skipped the dotted quarter eighth note
Yeah, there
thing.
you go.
You know what I mean?
Well,
It's
so-
like little stuff.
We, when my daughter was about 2, Kyle and I hit a point in the program where we were like, we need to figure out how to change some things up, but we need some inspiration or ideas or whatever. So this is a very odd connection, but one of my sister's friends is nieces with Linda Gammon. And Linda retired from her school, Rachel Carson Middle School in Virginia, a few years ago, and before she retired, we had the opportunity to go down and watch her classroom, and we were like, oh my gosh, you let us in your classroom. This is incredible.
And this was a Midwest band, right? And she had taken another school to Midwest too.
She had taken, I think, a band to Midwest 3 times. And the fact that like I even had a family connection with her kind of blew my mind. It was sort of like a little celebrity moment. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to go see her bands. But let's just do it. So we spent 3 days of our February vacation down listening to her bands, talking to her assistant band director, talking to her. And the first thing that Kyle and I were completely blown away by was this band's tone. And it was 7th and 8th graders, like kids who age level that I taught. They didn't have like all these people coming into their school to work with them. Like it was her and an assistant and one other person. And I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, we got to do this. We have to find a way to do this. And so we listened and we just got some ideas about tone, and we wanted to know, okay, what do you do for tone? How is their tone so good? We started writing a list. So then the next school year, the two of us every day would have something in our lesson plan that involved improving tone. But that didn't mean that we kicked everything else out the window and like stopped working on rhythm and stopped working on balance and stopped working on, just learning new notes and things like that. Like it just sort of morphed into another focus area that we had to do. And we just kept these cycles going of, we want the tone to be better. That's the end of the year goal, but we're not going to leave everything else behind. And it made a huge difference.
I think we found the biggest thing with tone too is just you get what you insist on.
Yeah.
So if you accept bad tone over and over again, you're going to get bad tone.
Well, and we were tired of it. Like I was like, this can't be like what I can't listen to this for the next 30 years. Like this is going to be horrible. And it's got to start with total fundamentals and everything. But a lot of people think those fundamentals stop at like grade 5 for some reason, that you don't have to like take the mouthpiece off the trumpet or take the head joint off the flute. I mean, kids might roll their eyes at you if you do it when you're in 8th grade, but I'm like, too bad, do it anyway. Like there's more things to learn with the flute head joint than one note. So
exactly.
It makes a huge difference.
So there's a podcast we just did on the Flute 360 podcast, so you should check that out if you haven't.
Okay.
So that's a Heidi K. Begay does that one, and she says that professionals use the head joint as well.
We forget about that. The mouthpiece thing was like huge for us when we were developing tone.
One other thing that Linda did that was crazy for me is the detail of organizing her chairs and stands.
Yeah.
So it was always set up, but then before the class would come in, she had a couple minutes, and she would go and flatten every stand so it was straight up and down, and put it where it's supposed to go, because we've all walked into the band room when like it's kind of set up but it's really a mess,
right?
And she was insistent that like, no, when the kids come in, it's going to be pretty orderly, because that sets the tone for everything they're going to do in the class.
Yep.
So
exactly,
she was super inspirational for us moving forward.
So neaten the chairs and the stands. And sometimes I have kids do that instead of me sometimes, because that's good leadership.
I have to touch every chair and
man.
stand. Sorry.
Every single time.
That's the difference between high school teachers and middle school teachers.
To touch it. I can't. Someone can set it up for me, but I'd still have to touch it.
Okay, let's transition. Next topic I wanted to talk about was something we could talk about for the next 40 years, I think. I think we all agree that we had good educations, and we're very thankful for our mentors and what we learned. But then we all realize what we didn't learn while we were in music school as well. So I will give a quick story. My first job, and I went and ordered my first piece of equipment, and the secretary flipped out because I knew it was in the budget, but I'd done the process wrong. So it like basically showed up, and then I gave them the bill, because I didn't know, the school didn't teach me that, and my college didn't teach me that. So luckily the secretary was extremely nice and helpful and all that, but like there's all these things that we don't know. Like I didn't know how to use a photocopier, stupid stuff. So let's have that discussion. Who wants to go first?
We can just talk between each other. Budget is a huge thing. Huge. Like they really should be talking about budget, even though it's different in every school. Like they need to talk about a process, like what's a purchase order?
So let's answer those things now. Take us a couple minutes into a budget process.
A budget process is you have to find the prices and send them. Well, my school was a little different because I could do it with the secretary, but my counter person, Sandy Berry at Mahoney, didn't give it to her secretary. I think she had to send it to central office. So you have to write up what you want and then make sure it's you have the right numbers that are in the budget. What thing it's coming out of? Help me out here.
like what line item?
Yeah, what line item it's coming out of, and then send it in, and they have to approve that, and then make a purchase order or order it for you.
And usually our budget process starts really early. So if you're coming into a job for the first time, you'd have to ask your the teacher before you when they put in the budget, what they put in for, and what was approved, because those can be two completely different things. And then your school's process for getting a purchase order. I know we have to get quotes for everything, even after the budget's been approved. So we'll get a quote for, I need this many boxes of reeds and this many bottles of valve oil. And then the person at that company will print up an invoice and then pull it from the shelf to bring it or order it for us. And it has to be approved from that part of the budget. Like it's a double process, at least maybe 2-3 times you have to go over stuff. So.
And you also have to make sure that it's actually in the budget. Like we couldn't order instruments. We weren't allowed to order instruments in the budget. It had to be,
Yeah. So, and you have to plan that. Like for us, sometimes it's Thanksgiving and you're planning your budget for July of the next year.
Because they stop it.
Yeah.
You can't order anything.
You can't order anything.
Right. So at some point you need to spend all your money too, right?
Yes.
The great Craig Skeffington was very good at, like, I'm spending every bit of money I have because they're going to take it. Because when the furnace breaks, they don't have a way to fix it. So they're going to take my music money to help fix the furnace.
Yeah.
But if it's spent, they can't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing is, I remember the year that we asked for a tuba. And it was Thanksgiving because we needed an extra tuba. But then late in the spring, a tuba player moved out of Westbrook. So we no longer needed a tuba. So we had like, it was $5,000 or whatever, it was $6,000 at the time. And we said, we want to get something else. The school board would not let us buy anything else. They insisted that we buy this tuba, which then has to sit there and not be used. Yeah. I mean, how much can you get for $6,000? Like a lot.
A lot.
But we couldn't get anything.
Yeah.
It had to be that tuba.
Yeah.
And so, I know I'm not here to bash those people. That's not my point. But it's like sometimes you have to deal with a lot of that stuff, and really knowing the people who make those decisions and trying to be on their good side will give you the best choice.
Yep. When you start a job, become really good friends with the secretary and the janitor.
Custodians. You have
definitely.
to know your custodians, and you got to know them well. You need to bring them candy and coffee,
cookies,
gift cards, and that stuff. And talk to them as often as possible, because people don't talk to them enough.
And if you're not sure if they're right or not about that, just wait till they don't clean your bathroom for a month.
Oh
Absolutely.
Gosh.
Been there.
And don't expect them to move everything. You move stuff too, and then they'll want to help you more.
Yeah.
Plus, they're usually nicer than everybody else in the school anyway.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Absolutely.
So what else didn't we learn in music school?
I feel like I didn't learn enough when it comes to managing a middle school classroom. Like I knew a lot about like the pedagogy stuff, and I knew a lot about the repertoire, and I knew a lot about, certain like technical things with running a rehearsal and planning out a rehearsal and everything. And then like I'm in front of my band and they're like, why didn't you do it the way that the last band director did it? And I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do with that? Like, kids who are, speaking out of turn or whatever. I just feel like I've had to come up with a bunch of different methods of my own or watch other teachers. And I don't feel like I learned those tricks in college, because by the time I got to my internship, I didn't really have to use any of those tools. Or, what it's like when you're the new person in front of a class and they just behave really well for you. So you don't actually have to do much. And then when your students get comfortable with you, you're like, oh, okay, now I have to get serious about that. So classroom management has been an ongoing thing that I have really had to work hard on to like make sure I keep everybody on their toes and that it's not going to get away from me.
Okay, can I just say that you are probably one of the best classroom management teachers I have ever met. You don't have to say a word. You don't say anything. You don't even make a face or anything, and the kids are well behaved.
Oh, thanks.
I spent time with her, so I know that.
It's pure fear.
I don't even know, though. She doesn't even have that fearness about her, though. She's just so kind all the time, and they don't do anything wrong.
That's nice, Jean.
We have a lot to learn. So let's think. What else?
Can I piggyback on the?
Yeah.
So I was at Memorial. They just started to do PBIS, which some people are like, oh my goodness, positive behavioral incentive system. Some of the people are like, oh my gosh, oh yuck, yuck, yuck. I loved certain aspects of that. When you start the school year and you brainstorm with your students about how to be safe and respectful and kind, and they come up with the rules, they won't break them. It's so weird. Like I had taught for years and my instrument room was always a mess, always. And I'd have a sign up saying, put your instruments in the cubbies, and they'd be all over the place. So when I started the school year, I said, how can we be safe? And some of the students said, have the instruments in the cubby so we don't trip over them. I said, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's reverse psychology works out great.
We did a John Wooden episode a long time ago, and one of his favorite quotes was, "It's not about who's right; it's about doing what's right."
Absolutely.
I love that. I'm writing notes right now, you guys.
The other thing,
yeah. Keep going.
Instrument repair.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
There needs to be a class on instrument repair.
Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
that was, yeah. That's like
one
trial by fire, isn't it? Like you
Yeah.
get your first broken clarinet in your hand and you're looking and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many things.
Joe
that could be
Betancourt's
wrong.
first rule is
Yes.
never repair it in front of the student.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's
And I
funny.
have some horror stories about how I repaired things, but and Joe has been great. I teach woodwind techniques at USM, and one of the things I do with the students is like I'll take a spring out of the flute and say, figure out what's wrong with that, because sometimes it's minor, and they just you don't have that experience. I didn't. None of us did.
Yep. No, that's true.
Yeah.
And you learn after a while what sounds sounds come out of the instrument that is wrong with the instrument, so you can tell by that point. But man, it took me a long time to get to that.
Me too.
I think I learned how to use a trumpet mouthpiece puller like in my first class or two. I don't think I knew how to do that when I was in college.
And I feel like you have to have a master's in engineering to figure out how to do some of them.
And what's funny now is we're all pre-YouTube era, right? We went to school and there wasn't YouTube.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
So now obviously everybody has the opportunity to check everything out and
Absolutely.
learn ahead. And they're doing a good job by listening to this podcast because they're learning a lot of these things from you that they wouldn't have known otherwise.
Yep.
Right.
I had something else. What was it?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes I'm in your head, but not all the time.
About repair or something else, because I have something else.
Oh, well, yes. I want to go to that something else. Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things I feel like in college when you are doing your conducting classes or anything where you're learning about how to be in a classroom, you're not actually learning what it's like with students that can't play. Like you're conducting with people that can already count. And can already play. So you don't really get that understanding.
So you're talking about the methods course where people are playing secondary instruments.
Yeah, where you're having to listen to people in
Yes.
front of you for the first time, really.
Yeah.
Who can all play.
Who can all play, who can actually count. And so you're up there and you think you have your score prepared and you go to conduct and it works out great. But the minute you get in front of a band when you're student teaching and you go to count them off and no one comes in because they don't understand how you do it.
True.
The baton doesn't make any noise.
The baton doesn't make any noise.
So have you talked in any of your episodes about how we use the amplified metronome?
No, go ahead. Let's do it.
So some of you are going to really roll your eyes at this one, but we're past all of that stuff about, having the perfect sound in our classroom. Cause let's face it, we are teaching kids. And you know what? Not every kid who comes into your classroom has a built-in steady beat. I don't know. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Jean, but some kids, they just can't, they have no sense of time in their bodies. And so we have a marching band program in Westbrook. And not only are we asking kids to think about the beat and play with the beat and have a beat, but we're also asking them to move to a beat. And so I don't even remember how many years it was, but we just decided, both Kyle and I decided one time that we were like, you know what? Amplified metronome. We're going to put this metronome on and it's going to be obnoxiously loud sometimes. But if our purpose in this moment is to really reinforce rhythm, keeping time, a group keeping a beat together, then we got to find a way to do it. That's external because like Kyle just said, the baton makes no noise. And we were getting exhausted. We were getting exhausted in front of our groups. Our arms were hurting. Our brains were hurting. And I just wanted to be able to stand there in front of them and just teach them and not have to worry about keeping time with my baton that makes no sound. So we amplified the metronome. We still do it many times. I mean, multiple times in a week with multiple different classes and multiple different situations. We're like, I'm just going to throw the metronome on and want y'all to pat to the beat. And then one section would do something, either playing or doing a rhythm exercise or whatever. And it's to an amplified metronome. And I use smart music so I can have that accessible really, really, really quick. But a digital metronome can work. A YouTube link to, an endless metronome. Even Google metronome I've used before. Plug it in.
And the
hit
cool
go.
thing about that is you can walk around and watch to see
Walking
what students are
around.
doing, which is great.
I get off the podium as many times as I can. The podium frustrates me. It makes me feel like I have a barrier in front of my students and that I can't get to them. And they need such hands-on experience when they're young. And so I would rather be off the podium than on. But the amplified metronome made that so easy. I was playing percussion one time because I just didn't need to think about it. Just
Right.
walk back there.
And if they don't need you, then you get up there and they actually might pay attention to you.
Absolutely.
They have a little
Yeah.
bit more of a chance.
And
Well,
then
yeah,
conducting
so once
became fun.
Absolutely. And then when you get up there, you can spend more time with dynamics and
Oh, yeah.
showing them,
Then
which
I
is
felt
great.
like I wasn't like hammering the beat anymore because they
Right.
had it. And so now I'm being a little bit more artistic, which we all know is like way more fun. That's the fun part of doing music with kids. It's not hammering down a beat.
So two things that had come up that I'm going to forget to talk about. One is you talked about being closer to the kids and being on the
Yeah.
podium is hard for that. Kudos to Timberlane Regional High School, Ken Clark and Tony DeBartolomeo. They taught me when I was much younger to put a big row right down the middle of the band.
Absolutely. Yep.
So as you're
Huge.
facing your band, just separate them enough for you to walk through
Yeah.
so you can get to the trumpet
Yep.
section and most importantly, the drummers.
I
but
actually
yeah,
had the
absolutely.
percussion section one year be on the sides of one of those rows.
And
Oh,
how did
yeah.
that go?
It was great. They could actually hear the band, but my room wasn't conducive to that because it
Yeah.
had the built-in risers. But it's wonderful because they can actually hear the band and they can see how their part fits
And
in.
it's funny, you try something like that you didn't plan on. Sometimes students mention it, sometimes you do it.
Right.
And then you may do it forever, you may not do it. I remember one time I changed the order of my back row and it was like obvious right away that it was terrible. It was not right for this. So I put it back the next day and it was done. And then I did that again this year, like 12 years later. I did it this year and it worked this time, so I kept it.
Yeah. I try to do a mix it up day every once
Oh,
in a
yeah.
while where they can sit wherever they want.
Yeah. Did you guys pick up on that at that the Peter Boonshaft conference?
I think I might have.
It was like
Yeah.
a New Hampshire, it
New
was a
Hampshire
New
band
England-
and
New England-
NHBDI.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
right. It was up at Plymouth State, right?
Any BDI.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that I remember the Mix It Up Day because I had heard about it from several people, including you. That like it totally wigs them right out though. They don't even
it
know
does,
how to
because
like,
they have to play alone. They're
Yeah.
not. They don't hear anyone else
But
playing
choir-
their parts, but it makes them
choir
listen.
teachers figured that out a long time ago. They'll
Yes.
mix it up all the time.
because
Yeah. Yep.
they can move around easier. It's wicked inconvenient if you have like all your percussions section in the back anyway, and then you want them to mix it up. But I just spend time on it. Like you
It's
put
really
those
fun.
instruments like randomly around the room somewhere, and they have to go find them. So.
But not enough so that they think they deserve it, right? Like I want to sit with my friend today.
Oh no,
No, it's just
no.
whenever you feel like
It's
you want to
Usually
do
it's
it.
like you have to sit beside a different instrument. You can't
Yeah.
sit like two clarinets together. You have to sit beside a different
Well, and the
instrument.
flute and the trumpet player do get excited because they can
Yeah.
sit next to their friends, but then they realize they don't have the same part at all, and the talking stops
Yes.
immediately. Like they have to think.
They have to listen.
But that actually does go along with classroom management too, because those like keep you on your toes moments like that. That's what helps your classroom to not feel like it's stagnant, and that's usually when kids get bored and then start causing issues or whatever. I find if you are in proximity to a kid, if you are literally teaching class next to them, they are not going to give anybody a hard time. And
Absolutely.
sometimes that just means you're standing next to them and you're having to teach the whole class in the middle of the trumpet section. Sorry, I don't know why, but like those trumpets sometimes
I
they
know.
they cause some issues. You were never that kid, Kyle.
You might have to ask my teachers if I
No,
was
I
that kid.
don't know. I don't remember if he was that kid.
I
didn't
also,
have him, but I remember
so
him.
I also want to remember. You talked about the metronome a lot because I've actually found too that then you take off the metronome and they can't play it all because they're like, "Where's the
Yeah.
metronome?"
Yeah.
So you have to use it, but then wean off of it.
Yes.
Don't use it. Use it. Don't use it. Use
Yeah.
it, and you have to
It's
insist
just
on it
another
even
tool.
though it's there.
Yeah.
It's just another tool.
Absolutely.
You were talking about getting in front and not. What do you do when you actually are teaching people who don't know anything or don't know what they're doing? Right. You were talking about like when you have people who don't know how to count, or maybe
Yeah.
that was Crystal.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, same. Either.
Yeah, either one.
So it made me think of this new book that's out. That if people haven't heard of it, it is by Andy Boysen Jr. and it's published through Chose called Developing Rehearsal Techniques. And what was cool about this is he basically recorded a number of or had a bunch of bands record some pieces, and then they recorded it like at their read through or the second read through or something where there was a lot of errors, and then it did a different recording when it was closer to performance time. And then he took those recordings and then he asked like, I don't know, over 50 teachers around the country who were like established teachers and said, will you listen to these recordings and give me feedback? What would you fix if this was your band? So then you can go through this book and read it, and then you can listen to the recordings and write down or fill out what you think you would fix if you were in front of it. And then you can see the answers of the people who've been doing this for all these years. And you can learn so that the first time you're in front of kids, it's not actually the first time you've experienced this.
Which is great, actually, because I, when I was in USM, Dr. Martin had one of that where we could listen and we had to pick out the errors. We had to pick out what was right and wrong. And when I asked USM students, they feel like they haven't gotten that. And Dr. Kinney and I are actually going to use that book this year. That's great. But that is a big thing. When they get in front of the band, they're so overwhelmed they can't hear anything. I've had a lot of student teachers, and that's what's happened to them when they've gotten up. They've been like, I don't know. I said, well, that's why you record when you're first teaching. You record your rehearsals. Don't you agree? You know.
Yeah.
And then eventually you won't need to, and you can hear, but when you're first starting off, it is hard to hear it.
And if you buy this whole thing, which I do not get a profit from, maybe I should, but I don't. When you buy it, it comes with the recordings, it comes with a book, and it comes with all the scores.
Yeah.
So you have everything you need to dive into it.
I think it's great. It's a great tool. It's a great learning tool.
Okay, what else didn't we learn in music school?
How to balance and about balance and blending an ensemble that doesn't have their standard instrumentation, like how to write to make them sound like they do.
So give us some tips.
So like if you have 75 saxophones and 2 trombones, you can actually.
So while you mention it, the flute trick, if people haven't heard about this, because from what I know, the flute, if you're the conductor, if you put them on the left side of the band, the right side of the band, your left side, their sound will tend to go out to the audience. Whereas if you put them on your right, the band's left, then their sound goes back into the band and gets absorbed. So the year I had a concert band of 42 and there was 15 flute players, one of which had a good sound and the other 14 were very nice people, right? We put them on the right side, and then that was like internal balancing. Whereas if you have a smaller or better flute section, put them on your left side, and it helps.
Yeah. Same thing with French horns. If you have a French horn section that's a little rocky, you put a lot of people around them.
Think about
really
where
close.
the sound comes out of the bell and put some bodies in front of it.
Yes. Yep.
I guess I should probably, I wasn't even planning to talk about this, but one thing I did not learn in music school at all is the idea of instrument suitability testing for 4th graders as they're coming in. Our program starts at grade 5. So instrument suitability testing, and I also include the 2 listening exams that you can get from GIA publications. They're called the IMMA tests, intermediate measures of music audiation. There's a rhythm and a tone test. So I do those 2 listening tests, and then instrument suitability for the incoming 4th graders. And that helps with instrumentation so much, because you're kind of taking away all of their preconceived notions about particular instruments, which kids always come into that kind of knowing, and then you can kind of set your balance from the beginning, because it is very hard to recover bad balance when you aren't starting with decent balance. So.
Don't you feel like that's also helped? There a lot of times students will pick the instrument because their friends have.
Yes.
And then when the friends start dropping because it wasn't a good instrument, hasn't that helped you?
Yes. And it also confirms your beginners, like a kid who was having a really hard time on the trumpet mouthpiece, and they knew that it was going to be hard for them. That allows them to actually push a little bit farther than maybe they would have otherwise, because they already knew, I picked an instrument that I know is going to challenge me a lot. And some kids are like the type of kid that's going to rise to that challenge, and then other kids are like, I want the easiest, give me the sound happening like tomorrow type of kid, and it allows them to kind of pick that as well. But you could probably do a whole episode on that, so I'm not going to get into that.
We will have an episode coming out in a while of beginning band repertoire, and I think I included a little spiel on that. Okay. But for now, for anybody who wants to know more about that, how could people contact you if they wanted to know more specifics about how you do it?
So it's Smith KR. So if you accidentally go smithk@westbrookschools.org, that's okay. That's going to go to Kyle, and he forwards it to me. It happens all the time.
I've actually done that before.
Yeah, many people have parents, it's community members, whatever. But it's smithkr@westbrookschools.org. Another amazing band director in the area who uses this a lot, who I learned from, is is Larry Jackson, and he's at Falmouth. I believe his email is ljackson@falmouthschools.org. Sorry, Larry, if you didn't know I was referring you. And Caitlin Ramsey from Cape Elizabeth also uses it. So any one of us, we've been using it for a while.
Awesome. Wow, this is great. Okay. So let's talk about some repertoire. All right. Middle school, because
we're not giving you two. We're not only giving you a couple.
I don't want, no, I mean, I just want to have a conversation.
Okay.
No, because this is, well, you'd be proud of me. I did the grade 1 podcast. It was so stinking long that I've turned it into 3 parts. Only one's come out so far, but there's so much music, and I believe in having this repertoire ready. Mm-hmm. So in your head or on this music, on this document, if I have good trombones, I do this piece. If I have bad trombones, I do this piece. Everything. So to me, people don't think about the repertoire far enough ahead. So in my book, I think about it ahead of time, and then I have it planned, and I try to match it up with the kids who are in the band, not whatever band they're in. Right. I think about the humans in the band. What should they be doing? And then I do that, and the music that will stretch them enough, but not be too easy, but obviously not be too hard. I know in middle school you can't always do that. I know maybe Krystle, you can speak to this, that sometimes you can't choose the music until you really know where the kids are at, and you're with them for a while.
They develop so rapidly that it's very hard to predict. Have you told people about your repertoire list? Like, has that been? Have you shared that with your audience?
I might have at one point. I've done a lot of repertoire episodes.
So basically what Kyle does, and what I think everybody should do, I should do the same thing. Mine is much less extensive than his is, but he literally puts down the grade level, the piece, and then what is great about the piece. And then he keeps this as a Google Doc forever. So he refers to it so often. It's like, it blows my mind because he'll pick out a piece, 6 years ago that doesn't work. And then he picks it out for like this next upcoming year. It's just crazy, which is why he has to not listen to music for a little while. But I struggle with doing that extensive planning per se, like picking out your program 6 months ahead of time, because there's so much that changes with middle school kids as you're going through the grades. I've had kids who have started out 5th grade and I thought they were going to quit the next week, and they end up being like an honors band student in 6th grade. And I have no idea what inspired them or what caused them to want to like really push hard, or what. I have no idea. And that's like not a kid that I would have counted on as a section leader. And then all of a sudden they're like leading their section and bringing everybody with them. And so that happens sometimes in weeks or days. And so you can only look ahead so far. So I will probably make some solid decisions in the first couple of weeks of school, and then even then I may have to like try something and then pull it back. I'm never afraid to get rid of something out of a program.
How do you know if a piece isn't a good fit, or if they need to just work through things more?
That's an interesting discussion. This may be a philosophical difference between me and many other people, but Jean and I both believe really strongly that if a band is not comfortable fairly quickly on a piece, that it's probably not something that we're going to push with them, because it creates a weird feeling in your classroom of insecurity. And I would much rather underprogram a piece and have them rock at it, and have them really like dig deep into the details of the piece, and even down to like tuning pitches, which is like something that not a lot of middle school band directors do, working on balance and blend and dynamics, and getting really specific about different types of articulation, not just long and short, but how a particular articulation goes with a style. And like you can get into all of that and have weeks left before your concert. You've done the kids no damage.
And when your band sounds really, really good, everybody thinks you're amazing.
They
because
think
your
you're
band
amazing,
sounds good.
but you just programmed a grade 1 piece. Like, I am not above that at all. I just don't care. I don't care if I go to festival and I haven't had a single grade 2 piece in my program for my 7th graders or whatever, if it's right for them. I want the kids to sound good, honestly, as quickly as possible. I don't know if it's a percentage or whatever. I just want that feeling very quickly of the kids are really liking this piece. So when they leave the classroom, they're going to ask for it when they come back. Are we doing this piece?
Yeah. I try to pick an easy piece that I can work on balance and blend and intonation and all that fun stuff. That's a learning. And then I try to pick an intermediate piece, maybe a march or something, and then a reach piece, so that they don't think they can play it at the beginning, and hopefully they will. But when you can hear it when you've been teaching long enough, that something's not going to work. Like you can, like you listen and you're like, okay, I've got to switch pieces.
The feeling in the class
they're not excited
good.
about it. They're not going to get it.
You can only push them so far when they're in that headspace.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's like saying, okay, I have 2 months to achieve this. This is achievable, and it could be running or weightlifting or like anything, and I can do this within 2 months, or I can't do this within 2 months. You have to be realistic goals.
And middle school kids are just a little more insecure, so they're quick to say, and unfortunately with some kids it becomes like comic relief for them to say to each other, oh, we're really terrible at this piece. And then it's like, then you run into a situation of, oh, they actually are making fun of the fact or almost enjoying the fact that they don't sound good. And you never want to get to that point. You want them to be challenged and accept the challenge and love the challenge, but you don't want it to get into a place of, oh, we're awful. Like this piece is awful for us. Because they might do that at first, and you have to kind of like pull them back and say, no, it's something you have to like work through. But that work through mentality can only go so long.
And in
and
17
it depends
years,
on the group.
Really depends on the group.
In 17 years, have you ever been to a festival where they said there's not enough notes in your program?
Oh gosh, no, definitely not.
No.
So when we talk about repertoire, on the Growing Band Director website, there are a bunch of episodes we've done on repertoire and more coming out. There's lists on there of all those pieces. So we have not cross-referenced pieces here, but I'm guessing that a lot of the pieces we're about to talk about are on those lists. So feel free to check those out as well. Jean, you go first. Throw us a piece. You get this. We'll go around.
Oh,
throw us a piece.
Wait a minute. I can't do a piece.
Just start with the piece.
For what
you'll
grade?
You'll
like
get
a half?
whatever you want.
Oh, a piece I think is such a great thing, a learning tool. I'd have to say, I can't just pick a piece.
This is what I yelled at you about yesterday, Kyle.
We're going to talk about all of them.
Okay.
I just want you to start with one.
Range, arranged by Michael Sweeney, I feel like is such a great learning tool, and it's actually not a learning tool, but a great piece for kids because it's an actual
from Lincolnshire Posey.
From Lincolnshire Posey. It's great.
So,
and it has different meters.
I learned this from you a couple months ago. So you incorporated a warm-up with that piece, doing an honor band. Can I tell them about this warm-up?
Sure.
So Jean had them do a concert B flat scale, but then she mixed up her meter, and the kids weren't able to change to the next note of the scale until she got to beat 1. So you might have gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
No,
they didn't notice, so they had to watch.
I love
it
that.
was pretty slow, but it not only worked on something for the piece, but it worked on their skills.
Right.
So very experienced teacher.
And for them
there.
to see the different meters.
Yep.
Because when they stick their head in the music, they probably wouldn't have seen that. So they could feel that.
And they can't function if they're not watching you.
No, right,
Yep.
right.
So use that one.
I teach students how to conduct too.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one thing that I've sort of developed over time, which is a funny thing, but all the kids want to be on the podium, grab your baton and be the conductor. So I do it together. And on a piece like that, that's amazing because you're just drawing attention to the fact that you're not waving a baton for no reason.
Right.
There's purpose. And so when my kids learn how to conduct, it's definitely with the intent of, okay, tell me where beat 1 is before they start to conduct. And they all have to yell out 1. And if I'll go on, change the meter or the tempo or whatever, 1. But that is perfect communication with them without saying anything.
And it's a great way for them to learn the meter. That's why I love this piece. Yeah. It's a grade 2, but I did it with 8th grade. I'm not sure I would do it with 7th.
Yeah.
Depends.
Well, again, it's more about
group,
it's about their skill level, not their age, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Typically,
right. You don't really know.
I mean, if you were in Texas doing the middle school honor band,
that would be 6th grade or 5th.
All right, Krystle, what's your first piece?
Well, I'll go with the ballad too because I like that she picked up on the transcription. So one of my favorites is an arrangement of Song Without Words. And that is also probably along the grade 2 lines. But I also told the students about how that was one of my favorite movements when I was in school. When I learned Holst 2, I just thought that was the most beautiful piece. And this arrangement makes it so that it sounds like the original, which Horkstow does too.
Yes.
But you're in front of them and you're like, this is not only a great experience for them, but it's a great experience for me. And I can share with them that there's this original piece and they've written it special for middle school. And you don't lose the value of it. Those tense harmonies that exist, they're still there.
They're still there.
You can lean into them when you conduct. You can teach them how to lean into it when they play. So it requires them to have to move a little bit. Again, I did it with a more mature group of students so that they could handle those experiences, but it ended up being their favorite piece, which was like a proud mama moment.
Yes, I love it. And I don't know about you. I know you feel the same way I do. I've always taught my students it's not about the notes, it's about the music.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just lets you like slow down. And kids, in general, middle school kids don't like to slow down. So if you can find anything that connects with them, it's a win-win. It's a good one.
Another transcription. I only have a couple here that I'm going to share because this is about you guys. But The Lost Lady Found, which is the sixth movement from Posey, same arranger as Sweeney, right?
Yeah.
So good as well. That's a really good one to work on different types of articulations.
Yeah.
All right, Jean, what's up next?
Another one? Okay. I really like There Will Come Soft Rains by Robert Sheldon. That's an older piece, but it's beautiful, and it also teaches students. That's a slower one, but I do have a fast. Do you want me to give you another one? A faster one right now?
Sure.
You want to wait?
Sure.
Grade 2 Highland Legend by John Moss. That's a great 6/8 piece.
Oh, more 6/8.
Yeah, it starts off in 2/4, but it goes to 6/8, and it still has that same feel. And the kids love it. It's a challenge, but they loved it. It's playable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm writing that down. 6/8 pieces are so hard to come by when it comes to like getting it appropriate for middle school. So I didn't even write this down, but I am now because it's one of my favorite 6/8 pieces to teach. So I have to tell everybody about it. But it's All You Young Sailors by Pierre Laplante. It is a really fun 6/8 piece, and all of your students will think it's SpongeBob SquarePants at the beginning because it literally starts with lives in a pineapple under the sea. And they love it. And it's totally not the text of that song, but it's how they connected with it at first, which
it hooks them in.
And honestly, it's a grade 1. Like, I think the note range I think it's like a 6 or 7 note range on the piece, but because there's so much new learning in it, it's like, I think I do it with like 7th or 8th grade when I want to teach them 6/8, because I want them to know a little bit of 6/8 before they get to high school. So that's one of mine that, I mean, I have done that piece probably 5 or 6 times at least. It's great.
I like the Michael Brown arrangement of Salvation is Created. Craig Skeffington and I did that a while ago with an all-state group. And
I remember that. I think Alex was actually in that.
Yeah. You talk about something that sounds like the original.
It's true.
It's so good.
And that one can be done very slow and still sound just amazing, even with middle school.
And you can work on it forever. You can do it with an all-state band and it sounds great.
That's true.
But you don't need 600 trombones.
It's true.
Like the original. Okay, so everybody get your pencils ready. Jean, let's hear more of yours. Give them to us.
A lot of them are just like, okay. So
Read the room. Read the room.
Groovy by Richard Saucedo. That's a grade 2, which is really nice.
Yep.
That's very rhythmic, and you have to have strong mallets that really watch, and it's great for kids learning how to watch.
Because the mallet player runs it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Did I already? Aces of the Air by Swearingen. That is such a great march. It's a great march anyway, but it's a 2.5. It's great for kids. I mean, it sounds a lot like it. It's another one that is well arranged.
Quick interruption. Throw us your favorite march, Krystle.
That would be Alamo. It's a Carl King march arranged by Swearingen. It's cut time, but it's like cut time that comes together really quickly. So again, kind of referencing the 6/8, doing 6/8 quickly kind of thing. Alamo, once you teach like a few like ground rule cut and time rhythms and develop a rhythm sheet, I do that before pieces sometimes too, especially if there's new meters or new rhythms or whatever. Teach those first, and then you've got like a sophisticated rhythm, and there's a grandioso section at the end that you can have so much fun with playing around. I love that piece.
I have my few moments far in between with this lady, right? So I want to remind you that I found that piece and shared it with you.
Here we go, people. Actually, none of these ideas are original. Kyle finds all of my repertoire, and
that's not true.
Okay,
it's not true. Just that one.
Just that one. Yeah.
So this is an older one. Actually, there are 2 older ones. One of them is Reverberations by Brian Balmages. The kids love it. It's harder, but it's not too hard. We were talking about that. It's doable, and it makes them really listen. Makes them have to count too. Oh, because it's all 8th note movement. It's crazy.
Right. I could hear an amplified metronome on that kind of a piece.
I know, totally, absolutely. Yep. And A+, a precise prelude, an excellent march. That is so cool for teaching kids how wrong notes really make something sound bad.
What's the concept behind that? Do you remember?
The concept is they play through the march first with all the correct notes, right? Or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It deteriorates throughout the piece.
Yeah. So they play first with all the correct notes, and then they go back when they repeat it. They all have to pick a place where they're going to screw it up, or they can just they can play the wrong rhythm. They can play the wrong note.
Yep.
And there's a chart in the back to give you the percentages. So an excellent 100% band, there could be how many mistakes? It depends how big the band is.
Yep.
With 30 mistakes, it's still a great performance. It's an excellent performance, and it sounds terrible.
It sounds horrendous.
It just shows the accuracy that music has to be for it to be a good performance.
I think the percentage was at 97%, the piece is almost not recognizable.
Yeah.
Whereas in our world, a 93% is like an A.
It's great for parents to see that.
Yeah.
I think it's really to hear it.
And everybody has ears. So, and you have to do it live in front of people.
Yes.
So that's what makes it so hard. There's a great video on YouTube by Jack Stamp that's called Why Music Matters.
Yeah.
And it's a 5-minute video that you should check out. It's very much like this.
Mm-hmm. Sweet.
That's cool.
Great pieces. I think most of those are on the list.
They are.
So if people haven't checked them, go check them out because you're missing out.
You mentioned the Paul Lavender series that we were talking about yesterday on the podcast.
I don't remember which pieces from Paul Lavender. We talked about Homework Blues.
Yeah, Homework
that hasn't
Blues
come out
is
yet though.
Yeah, Homework Blues is like my
in Prehistoric Suite.
Yes.
That hasn't come out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Paul Jennings though.
Paul Jennings
Yep.
is Prehistoric Suite. Paul Lavender pieces, Homework Blues, Gallant March, High Adventure. And you can kind of do them in a series of those 3 in order, however it works for you. Like if you want to do a concert really early with your beginners and then have something a tiny bit harder and then a tiny bit harder. Those 3 are all 6-note pieces that just move around with quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes. So they are very accessible and kids love them.
Okay. What other pieces come to you, Krystle?
I put Portrait of a Clown on there. That's not one that I have done for a while, and I love how it sounds. There's just not many pieces that are written that way for the grade 2 level. Really works on articulation like crazy. The 2 main things that would be focus things for you and your group if you were going to do this would be staccatos and articulation in general. So staccatos and accents are both in there. And then ties and counting ties. Loaded.
That's one of the hardest.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's letter C. Yes, it's been traumatizing for me at some points. I think that's why I know it's letter C. And I remember the kids, if I had to start at letter C, they'd be like, no, letter C. So I that was before I actually did an amplified metronome, but I feel like maybe that would help that section. But it's just a really cool sounding piece. So Portrait of a Clown would be one. And then I literally have not done this piece for 15 years, 17 years, 15 years. I'm looking at Kyle because I did it so early when we were here in Westbrook, but Prairie Songs by Pierre LaPlante. If you have full instrumentation or close to full, at least take a look at the score because it's got that American folk song kind of sound to it, and there's a lot to teach with rhythm, and there's just some really beautiful harmonies in the piece, and all the while it sounds very traditional. It sounds very Americana. It sounds just happy, and I don't know, I think kids tend to want to connect with the dark sounding pieces all the time, and they all want the minor pieces, and so we tend to program stuff like that for them. But there's something about this piece that is just light and fun and really enjoyable to teach. And it's one of those, I don't know what it is with Pierre LaPlante pieces, but I swear you can teach them forever and ever and ever. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And I could probably do that piece for 2 years in a row, teaching one group, but I of course have not done that. So there's just a lot to teach.
And a lot of his pieces are the same way.
Yeah. It's before you do American River songs, you can do Prairie Songs. It's that type of piece.
Tell us about Aunt Rhody's Appetite.
Oh my gosh. Those of you who teach beginning band out there, if you want an experience that will include more than just you and your band, you need to do Aunt Rhody's Appetite, because there's a skit that goes along with this. It's really, 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 really entertaining. You will have your audience rolling. The kids will be having a blast performing it. But the basic premise of the piece is that it's beginning band pieces. So you've got Go Tell Aunt Rhody, Lightly Row is in there. Funeral March quote is in there. Twinkle, 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 Little Star is in there. Mary Had a Little Lamb is in there. Hot Cross Buns is in there. And Joseph Campello basically wrote a script to go around those pieces. So there's a narrator. There's somebody who plays Aunt Rhody. There's somebody who has to play a goose. There's somebody who has to play a chef. And basically,
Wasn't there a rubber chicken somewhere in here too?
Oh, there's a chicken. Yeah, yes. The chicken, it has to come out from your band because the goose gets cooked, and then you play the funeral march, and a kid from the band holds up the rubber chicken as funeral march is being played. But literally, it's just so entertaining and so fun, and the kids look so forward to having whoever you've chosen to be all of those parts up on stage with them playing this show. Really, it's like a show for fifth graders. I got in teachers on it mostly, and my co-teacher at the time, the kids just thought she was hilarious, and so she would always ham it up. But find like your drama people, maybe your principal can be the narrator. I did that one time. Find teachers to play some of the other parts. People will get in on it, and it is just so entertaining. It makes Hot Cross Buns and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and Lightly Row and all of those songs. It just makes it all come to life, and they're going to have a blast, and so will you. So it's so awesome.
Any more pieces you want to talk about?
There's tons, but they're in this.
They're
on the
online,
list.
Yeah. So go on. What I would recommend everybody is just listen to music whenever you feel like you can stand it, and then write down the piece if you like it.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I'm curious, when you listen to a piece, do you hear your band playing it as opposed to the musicians that
I
are
listen
me
to.
too.
I hear my band
That's what
right
makes me
now,
do-
and I'm
Yes.
like, nope, I can't play that.
Me
They
too.
can't do that.
Me
Yeah,
too.
that's true.
Interesting. We're all alike. Let's talk about parent communication. So, yikes. Like, I remember when I first started teaching, you kind of just assume kids are going to show up to the concert and kids are going to know, but they have to know and all that. Like, so I try now to over communicate, not to an obsessive level, but whatever activity it is, making sure the parents know well, like when they start the whole activity, the entire calendar for everything. And then, when it's a month out, maybe a reminder, and then a week out, a reminder, and things like that. And I've had parents, we both have, I'm sure you have as well, Jean, like parents just thank you for communicating. I wish the sports teams did this, you hear that all the time. So what are some tricks and tips we use for parent communication?
Sometimes communicating for no reason at all. No motivation behind it. Just, telling them a quick report of the week or something you experienced or a little highlight. It doesn't need to be a full-fledged thing, but just, letting them know that you have their kid and this is what's going on. I send out, sorry, Jean.
No, it's
go ahead.
Can I just say something with that?
Yeah.
I just send things that are good before you send things that aren't so good.
Yep.
That's one big thing that I've always been huge on. And send things not necessarily about music. I think that's what you were talking about.
Yep.
Like if you see something happen with a child, say, hey, I noticed.
Yep. That's great. I do tend to, when a kid does something well or something that's remarkable or something that's just good, and I want to let the parent know about it, there's two different things that we do at our school. One is for sure an email. That's like number one. But the other thing that our school does, I think is actually pretty cool, is it's a postcard, and you fill out the postcard with like the compliment to the kid and how you noticed they were like this in class, or they did something great, or you see a lot of potential in them or whatever. And then you mail that to the kid, and they get this postcard in the mail. And then I end up hearing all these things from the parent or the kid or both. And it just kind of like lights you up a little bit that you did something and you were doing it to give it to the kid, but then you get something in return that you weren't expecting. It's cool. It's kind of a cool experience because I think we are sort of ingrained to only alert ourselves to the bad things happening.
And sometimes it's the only positive thing they've heard.
Absolutely.
In a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in a way, it brings the parents and the kids together.
It brings the two together for sure.
And I also feel like they're less likely to feel like you're attacking them if something doesn't go well with their child. If you've had the child's back all this time, they'd be like, okay, thank you.
They trust you.
They trust you. Absolutely. You have to build trust.
And we have long relationships with these kids,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many other teachers have their students for 2, 3, 4 years in a row. I mean, maybe if you have a looping teacher for 2 years or whatever, but we just see them for such a long period of time that you are getting to know not just the kid, but you're getting to know the family too.
Absolutely.
So you want to know what the parents do for work sometimes, or what their life is like, outside of school.
So Jean, if you had a message to give band directors, current band directors, old band directors, young band directors, soon to be band directors, kids in 7th grade like Krystle who knew they were going to be a band director, at any step along the way, what could we tell them?
My biggest thing as a teacher, no matter how old or how young you are, is never stop learning. Always put yourself out there to learn something new every year. Keep working at all the instruments. Make sure you can play it better than the students you have. And really communicate with parents. Really care about the whole child, not just the musician.
You heard it here first. Krystle?
I think my thing, and I think I value this more now than I did at first, but I know I did it at first too, and that is to connect. I feel like the only reason why I survived last year was because I was able to connect with Jean. And the only way that I survived my first year coming right out of college was to connect with some of these colleagues that I had who had been teaching forever. Terry White was in the area. Tom Lizotte was in the area, and I knew Tom from high school, and just the fact that I could go and talk to them made me feel like somebody had my back and somebody was my mentor. And they give you like mentors at school or whatever, but they probably teach English, science, like they don't understand your classroom. And it can get so isolating as a teacher. I think even now sometimes it's just so isolating. Like we don't talk to our colleagues face to face often enough to keep that community solid. And so just work really hard to stay connected with as many people as you are willing and able to do, so that you feel like somebody's got your back and you've got somebody's back, because we all need that. This job is hard.
So I hope everybody's enjoyed the amazing insight you guys have given to us. It's been a real pleasure. I think you guys should be on the podcast more often.
Oh gosh.
Oh my gosh.
You're way more fun than I am, that's for sure. Jean, if people want to reach out to you, what's a good way for them to do that? Social media, email?
Jean.quinn234@gmail.com.
What's the story behind that?
Nothing.
Okay.
It's a boring
no
Gmail.
Story.
There is no story.
It's easy to remember.
And Krystle, how would they reach out to you?
smithkr@westbrookschools.org. But if you mess up, and email Kyle.
Are either one of you on Facebook or other places?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. It's just Krystle Smith. Krystle is spelled Krystle. My mother named me after a soap opera actress.
Oh my god.
So those of you who know Dynasty, I was named after Krystle Carrington.
Oh my gosh.
So that's the only thing you have to look up, Krystle Smith.
And I'm Jean Druin Quinn on Facebook.
Beautiful. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed the time together. We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.